Dad trick. Dad explains. Name Dad. Weird times. Video games are no stranger to changing their names. Rockstar's school-centric game Bully ended up being called Canis Can Edit in Europe due to negative associations with that word of bully. Likewise, when the mega popular Japanese series Dragon Quest first arrived in America, it was called Dragon Warrior, due to the name Dragon Quest already being used by a board game, and developers Square Enix were worried they might get into legal trouble using it too. We could easily just list off video games that have changed their names, but I want to focus on one franchise. One that has a really complex history in regards to what exactly it's called. If you pay close attention to the gaming industry, I'm sure you're aware that cozy games are all the craze right now. Cute little games with minimal peril where you do simple tasks like go fishing, make friends, and in many cases, farm. Farming is a huge aspect of many of these titles, and that's because one of the most influential games in the cozy genre was a game that was more or less dedicated to farming. That being the 1996 Super Nintendo game Harvest Moon, called Bikoji Montagarari in its native Japanese, which simply means farm story. I think I pronounced that right. Sorry, any Japanese Harvest Moon fans watching this video, which just upset you there. My bad. This farming simulator game established a framework that so many cozy games and farming games still use to this day. You go about your time growing crops, tending to your animals, and even chatting with the locals. The game proved to be a moderate success in its native Japan and across the wider world, finding a loyal fan base with each game released. The game was created by one Yasushiro Wada, who worked at a game developer called Marvellous Inc. Video games, however, in many cases need publishers as well as developers. While in Japan, Marvellous also published the games, in the West those duties were given to a different publisher called Natsume. This meant that Natsume were also in charge of things like translating the game from Japanese to English. And seemingly it was Natsume who decided the series needed a different name in the West. They felt that the name Farm Story was a little bland and generic, so coined that name of Harvest Moon. Well, they didn't coin it, I suppose, as that term has existed to reference a stage of the lunar cycle for ages now. But they were the ones who thought it would be a good name for this game series. They have never really explained why they chose this name, but it was probably just a business decision. It's a highly evocative word, and the harvest aspect of the name links nicely into the farming you'll be doing while playing. So from the get-go, this series already has two different names, Farm Story in its native Japan and Harvest Moon in English. This could already make things confusing but somewhat manageable, and things stayed this way as more games were released in the series over the 90s, 2000s and early 2010s. But it was in the year of 2012 that things started to change. But before we continue, I'd like to briefly talk about Patreon and Super Thanks. Patreon is the best way to financially support Name Explained, and donating just $1 a month gets you ad-free videos, a chance to say what names get explained, an exclusive monthly newsletter, and your name at the end of these videos. All of that can be found at patreon.com/Name Explained, which will be linked down below. Conversely, if you want to just make a one-time donation, you can leave a super thanks directly in the comments section of any of my videos here on YouTube. They help out tremendously too. Thank you. Also, and this is a bit of a weird thing, I need to give a thank you to someone called Sean. You may have noticed recently on my YouTube community section, I asked if anyone was able to trade with me an Iron Leaves and a Walking Wake to complete my Pokédex on Pokemon Violet, and someone did. A lovely person called Sean messaged me on Instagram, traded them with me, I traded them back to him, and I completed my Pokédex. And as a huge thank you to Sean, I'm giving him a plug here. Cheers mate, that helped out so much. And yeah, I like Pokemon. People are confused when they were like, oh, Patrick, Name Explained likes Pokemon. Like, I've literally got Squirtle tattooed on my arm. I'm a man in my early 30s. Of course I like Pokemon. Because, yeah, of course I do. But no, maybe I'll do some more Pokemon trading in the future. I'm not sure, but for now, thank you so much, Sean. Also, hello, I've been away for a couple of weeks. I'm sure you might have seen I've been on paternity leave. This was kind of planned. Baby was all planned, but they decided to arrive 2 or 3 weeks early, which kind of threw a big spanner in the works for my job. But luckily I had like my paternity announcement video just loaded up on the channel, and all those compilations ready to go live, and I could just set those up. So we're all good. Baby's fine. Everyone's fine here. It's a big adjustment to life, but we're pulling through. And also you might notice I'm in a different location. Filming in my office isn't really doable at the moment due to just having a new person in the house and have to move things around. So I'm currently in a different room where it's just easier for me to film. Nice clean background, not the funnest background, but it gets the job done. Anyway, I wrote this video like 3 weeks ago now, and I'm like, I actually have to film it now, so yeah, happy to be back in the swing of things, I think. But yeah, dad trick, dad explains, dad. Weird times. But as I was saying, it was in 2012 that things got really confusing. This year saw the release of Harvest Moon 3D, A New Beginning, and what we didn't know is that this would be the final Harvest Moon game. Well, as we knew them anyway. After the release of this game, developers Marvellous and Western publishers Natsume announced they would be parting ways. Marvellous would continue publishing the games themselves in Japan, however. This caused a bit of an issue in the West, as Natsume created that name of Harvest Moon for the game in the West. It meant they had the rights to it, leading to the Harvest Moon games no longer being legally allowed to be called Harvest Moon in English. What this meant is that Marvellous had to find a new publisher for their games in the West, with that publisher being called Xseed, who would go on to become part of Marvellous's US operations. They also, however, had to find a new name for their games to be called in the West too, as they weren't legally allowed to be called Harvest Moon anymore. The name they landed on was Story of Seasons. This leans into the native Japanese name of Farm Story, but also the use of seasons ties into that idea of time passing, like the moon part of the old name did. And of course, seasons are pretty instrumental in farming. 2 years after this whole debacle, in 2014, Marvellous released their next game in the franchise, simply called Story of Seasons in the West. And from here, they've used that name in the West ever since. Even remakes of older games which were originally called Harvest Moon are now rebranded as Story of Seasons. Of course, none of this affects their native names in Japan, where they're still just called Farm Story, or that Japanese version of Farm Story I butchered earlier. So, just to recap, we have this series called Farm Story in Japan, which was dubbed Harvest Moon in the West, which then in the West had to legally change its name to Story of Seasons, while still being called Farm Story in Japan. That's already pretty confusing to say the least, but somehow things get even more confusing. Let's go back to 2012 when Marvellous and Natsume parted ways. As mentioned, Natsume owned the rights to that name Harvest Moon, and as the brand had built up so much recognition over the years, the guys at Natsume decided to carry on making games called Harvest Moon, which while were still farming simulators, had no connection to the previous Harvest Moon games. They were not made by the same people or anything like that. They were just like, oh, we have the name, we'll just do it ourselves, I suppose. Much to the chagrin of Harvest Moon fans, former Harvest Moon fans, Story of Season fans, it gets confusing. This meant that also in 2014, the year the first Story of Seasons game came out, Natsume released a game called Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley, which had nothing to do with the OG Harvest Moon franchise. They were just trying to piggyback off the market value that name has. Since 2014, Marvellous had been releasing games under the title of Story of Season, and Natsume had been releasing their games called Harvest Moon. And by and large, the post-2014 Harvest Moon games had been seen as poor cash grabs, while the Story of Season games are seen as the true Harvest Moon titles, the ones that were so pivotal in the cozy game genre which dominates the market today. So to finally recap, today we have a series of games called Harvest Moon, which are widely seen as not being Harvest Moon games, and a series called Story of Seasons, which are considered to be the true Harvest Moon games. And on top of this, Story of Seasons is still called Farm Story in Japan. That gives us 3 different names for 2 completely different farming game franchises. It's super confusing to say the least. Honestly, the main reason I wanted to make this video was just so I could figure out what was going on here. Do you think there's a game franchise out there with a more confusing name in history? And if so, let me know down below. Also, please share a topic down below which we could cover in next Monday's Name Explain video. It could be about literally anything, and the topic can be as niche or broad as you like. I will then choose 3 of those topics and place them on a poll for my patrons to vote on. Then the winner from that poll will be the topic covered in next Monday's Name Explain video. You can vote in that poll, as well as enjoy many other great benefits by visiting patreon.com/nameexplain, which will be linked down below, and by donating just $1 a month. Thank you. Anyway, that's more than enough for myself, and I just want to say this is completely unscripted. It's so nice being back here making these videos. It's been a real crazy few weeks to say the least, but we're back, baby. Quite literally baby, I guess. Thank you all so much for watching and enjoying these videos, guys. Yeah, like, it's going to be scary, it's going to be interesting, but with your guys' support, we should hopefully, me and my kid, my family, I guess, will just pull along still, fingers crossed. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to mention that. Thank you all so much. But don't forget to go follow me on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and don't forget to join the Facebook page, Friends of Name Explain, where you can chat with myself and many other name nerds. Okay all, take care. It's still me. Are we all good? I think we're good. Right, this has been a while. Let's film a video, I guess. Using it too. So the dog's barking. Cute little games with menial who worked at a game development but they felt like This year saw the release of Harvest Moon 3D, A New Beginning. Okay all, take care. We're back. Right, I'm gonna go make sure my kid's okay.